Okay, well, it's great to be here and seeing all you lovely people. I guess speaking about roots, I would say that the roots of GEN have to go back to Denmark around 1970. This was when the cohousing movement got started. And at that time, this was a time when women were beginning to enter the labor force and women's lib. But a lot of women were forced with the choice of either having a career and having the kids in the institution several hours, or else staying home and then maybe losing their career. And so Hildur and I and a few of our friends, we found a third way, which was to build what turned out to be called cohousing. And there had all the characteristics we know today, like common house and peripheral parking and so forth. And that was a very successful model, which was expanded in Europe and North America and Australia over the next 20 years. Now, a significant event in my own personal life was back in 1982. I had a very powerful spiritual experience while I was at an ashram in India. And this was like an awakening. I was a businessman, basically, and I had no knowledge about spirituality. But I experienced a very high level of consciousness, which opened up new horizons for me. And I realized that I was on the wrong path, and that our whole society was on the wrong path. And I wanted to do something about it, make it to become a more spiritual and a more sustainable world. And so I formed the Gaia Trust, as was mentioned in the introduction, in 1987. And about that time, I met Diane and Robert Gilman, who moved actually to Denmark and stayed with us. And we decided to leave our co-housing in 1991 and moved to this farm in Western Denmark. And there, one of the first things we did together was we invited a number of our contacts internationally to come to Denmark and discuss and brainstorm how could Gaia Trust best use the funds that we had coming into us. And we talked for about a whole week, discussed many different possibilities, and then we came to a conclusion that, number one, we know what the problems are, and number two, we know what the solutions are. The problem is implementation. And so we had asked ourselves, well, who is actually walking their talk? Who is actually doing something on the ground and not just holding conferences and writing papers? And we discovered these are the people who are in the intentional communities around the world. Places like Findhorn, Damanhur, Oroville, Solheimer. They're the ones who are walking their talk. And I thought, that's what we want to support. We want to support this movement. And so what happened was we decided to go ahead and do that. And the next thing is that these people, plus a few other ones, we got together over the next few years. And finally, after several years, we had a plan how to proceed. And Findhorn was planning a conference on sustainable communities in 1995. And we decided this is a good place to present our plan. And so we did that. 25 of us went to Findhorn that year. And on the final morning of the conference, the final Friday, I was presenting the idea that we developed of developing a global network of communities that could be the foundation for something totally new, a new civilization. And I was using the analogy of the caterpillar in the metamorphosis into a butterfly. And just as I was talking about this, you know this, when the caterpillar dies, certain cells survive. We call them the imaginal cells. And they form a network, and they begin to communicate with each other, and they form the foundation of the butterfly, this new foundation. I was using this analogies to what we were planning for the Global Ecovillage Network, when a butterfly actually landed right on my overhead projector. I mean, really, and this is in October, where you never see butterflies in Findhorn in October. So this was like a divine intervention, like an omen that we were on the right track. And so we decided there the next day, when we founded GEN, one of the women did a sketch of a butterfly with the background of the Earth. We have it on the screen, yeah. And this is showing the Earth, and a photograph of the Earth taken from space in the background. That was the basic idea of the first logo. Well, after that, we started developing these networks across the world. And we developed the world into 3 areas. One was the Americas with Albert Bates in Tennessee as the secretary. We was in Europe with Declan Kennedy at Lebensgarten in Germany as the secretary. And the Asia, Oceania, with Max Lindiger in Crystal Waters, Australia as the secretary. And in an international office in Denmark with Hamish Stewart as the secretary. And this was the organization that which carried on for the first few years. And as things developed, we finally decided that we had to move further than just developing networks. Hildur always had the idea that we should have education brought into the GEN network. And so that happened in 1998 when we invited 50 people from the various ecovillages by that time around the world we knew who were interested in education to come to Denmark, the same place we met back in 1991. And at this meeting, we decided, 30 of the people decided that we would develop a curriculum over the next few years. And that curriculum was finally presented at Findhorn in 2005 on the 10th anniversary of GEN. And that was the birth of Gaia education as we now know it today with the 4 dimensions, the social, which goes back to the cohousing movement, and the environmental, the ecological, the economic, and then of course the worldview. Now the worldview is very important because that is what what unites us across all different kinds of religions and ethnicities and so forth. So here we are today. We're several years ago that we started this big project, and we might ask ourselves the question, well, what have we accomplished and what can we expect in the future? Well, I would say, I think that the Global Ecovillage Network is a living example of the way people can work together across countries, across race, across religion, across culture, across race, and work together in a harmonious way. And this is a great model that should be duplicated by other international organizations. We've shown how it can be done. And the reason why it works, I think, is that because it's based on the principle of community living. And community living is part of our DNA, part of our DNA. And that's why I think this Ecovillage movement is not going to fade away. It's going to continue. It's going to continue for generation after generation for as long as it takes. And eventually we will win the hearts and minds of the mainstream. I believe we are on the right side of history. We are on the right side of history, and we will succeed, leading by example.
Thank you so much, Ross. And with that beautiful transition, I'll hand it over to Lucilla to share a bit more about the next couple of years with GEN.
Thank you. Such an honor to be here. I'm so happy to see you all. And I must admit, I know about half the people. I've been hugging around. Yesterday, I told my husband, hopping. So I was hopping from one person to the next, and it's so wonderful to reconnect with my family and my tribe. And thank you for inviting me here after Ross, whom I appreciate immensely and deeply love, and I have known for more than 2 decades. So what happened? Ross, let's have a check here. How many people are in this tent who were in Findorn in 1995? Stand up. Yeah, great. Yay, acknowledge. Wonderful. Thank you. So these are very old and deepest roots as Jen. And I would also like to ask you all, how many people do we have here who have been actively involved in Jen over the last 10 years? Stand up. I want to see the activists, the ones who are doing the work on the ground and have been doing this for a long time. Thank you. Thank you, because patience and resilience are two key factors in community living. And anyone who's living together with other people knows this. You have to endure. You have to trust and know what you believe. And this will make changes in the world and will make changes in your life. And as 30 years have gone by since the beginning of Jen, I would also like to dedicate a moment to people who are no longer with us, but are with us forever in spirit. First of all, Hildur Jackson, co-founder of Gaia Trust, with her husband, Ross Jackson. Jean-Michel Pochat was a wonderful Gen Europe Council member. Kailash and Linda Joseph from ENA, who were the Gen IT staff, and Linda has been a board member for many years, wonderful colleagues and dear friends. Rashmi Mayur, who was part of the Vision Council of Gen and the Gen's ambassador to the UN. Coyote Alberto Ruz Buenfil from La Caravana Arcoiris por la Paz and Ecovillage Huehue Coyote. And my dear friend Laura, now I'm getting emotional, who was a really dear friend and a wonderful board member. Next. Diane Gilman. Diane Gilman, who was with Ross and Hildur at the beginning, together with Robert, and left us too soon. Margaret Kennedy, who is an economist and a writer on money and ecology and how banks work. And she was Declan's much-loved wife. Pracha Hutanuwat, founder of the International Network of Buddhists, Engaged Buddhists. Falco, founder of Damanhur, great visionary, huge inspiration for everyone in the world, the largest community. Macaco is here, and I asked her permission to have Falco's image on the slide because he was such an amazing human and a wonderful person whom I had the privilege to meet personally. And Joanna Macy, who left us in July. And we all dearly cherish and love for her wonderful work on deep ecology and the work that reconnects. And there's many more. There's many more who are no longer with us, but they are with us in spirit. And I want to honor them with one moment of silence and reconnection with all of them. Thank you. you. So, next slide. So, Angel will pace my talk. I have 1 minute per slide, so I have to be very quick because it's not easy to tell you 8 years of life in 8 minutes or 10 minutes. So we go to Lebensgarten Steyerberg. This was the first office. Declan Kennedy here, a wonderful enthusiast, permaculture designer, architect. He was a wonderful Gen Europe secretary, and he was assisted by Agnieszka and Barbara. And this was the first office, and they ran it between 1995 and 1999. And I see a lot of young faces in this crowd, so I want to give you some fun facts. What it meant to run a global network in those years. Internet was not big. We used faxes. We used paper mail. We were writing to each other. We used phone calls. And what did it mean? When we took over the office from them, we had these huge fax machines, a couple of old egg-shaped IMAX. I don't know if anyone remembers those. And but we were calling each other on the phone. And so that brought language issues because members would call us in from Sweden, from Turkey, from Greece. We were not sure we were understanding what they were saying, really. And another consequence was huge phone bills because international phone calls were so expensive that we had to have a clock timing that, saying, thank you, that's enough for now. But anyhow, using this very rudimentary, we can consider now rudimentary means of communication, we organized the first Gen Europe members meeting in Torri in June '98. And that was about 35 people came. It was only the members of Gen at the time. Declan Kennedy was chairing the meeting, and Ross and Hilder were there with us. And that was the first time that we really perceived that people could do things on the ground. And that's when I was elected as a council member of Gen Europe. And then the decision was made to move the office to this ruin at the time, but now it's no longer a ruin. Macaco was saying, this is where I live. It's an eco-village on the border between Italy and France. And it's a little like a hamlet, it's like a fortress. And we will be present at the Meet the Ecovillage space if you want to know more about our place. And so this was the office team. Here you see a much younger version of me. Casimir Reichmuth, who came from the German network. He was living in K77, Kastanienallee. So he brought all the German community movement to us and it was our angel. It did all the IT work and more than that. And this wonderful person here is Cristina Evangelisti, who has been our delegate to Riva for many years, and all the Riva people know her. And she is a wonderful colleague, and she's still living with us. And so what did we do? Using faxes, paper mail, phone calls. First of all, we had to deal with currencies. The euro wasn't there, so we were receiving membership fees in envelopes, and we had to figure out what this is. And so we had huge spreadsheets with drachma, German marks, Turkish lira, whatever. And every time we received the membership fee in paper, we had to calculate and then bring it to the bank, pay the bank money to change it. It was really complicated. We had like a huge drawer full of coins and banknotes. Now this for you is strange because we all, here in Hungary we use forints, so we had to change, but Normally, when you travel through Europe, you just use the same currency. At the time, every time we moved, we had to go to the bank and change the money. And then all these photos that you see, they were paper photos. There was no digital imaging. So all these are scans. I went out to my archives and dug out the paper photos, hoping they were still visible, and they were. And so I scanned them for you. And here you see we produced a piece of archaeology here, a DVD. We produced a CD-ROM. Who can read CD-ROMs nowadays? And we also produced wonderful Ecovillage bags and the T-shirts that Massimo's wearing. And it says, "Welcome to the future," and the future maybe is now. So welcome to now. Thank you. And we were 3 times financed by the DG Environment of the European Union, thanks to Agnieszka Komok's work. We went to the Green Week in Brussels, where we built a straw bale house. And we ran assemblies in La Cabe, Spain. Yeah, you remember? Yeah, you were there. In Stacja Wolimierz, Poland. What an adventure. 2001. Center for Alternative Technology in Wales, 2002. L'Arche La Flessière in France, 2003, and ZEG Germany in 2004. There were not gatherings, they were just members meeting, but they were getting bigger every year. So we started with 20 and then 50, 60, 70. I think in ZEG we were more than 100. We had the delegation at the European Social Forum in Florence, 2004. We marched. Casimir Inza Fraser from the Danish network was there. Jean-Michel and Martin Mueller. Martin Mueller, who is the chair of the Vision Keepers. We were all there because we also believe in activism, social activism. And we did publications, the Blue Book. The Blue Book is still available online on sale. This was written and created by Hilda Jackson and her assistant, Karen Svensson, in 2002. It's, I think, the first book on ecovillages that was printed and is a wonderful text to have. We were collaborating with all these ecovillage magazines, and we were sending articles rather than publishing our own newsletter because we didn't have the means to do that. So I have to hurry here. Okay. I want to show you a picture of the board. The board at the time was me, here, the little one on the side, Mete from Turkey, Mete Hakaloglu from Ekilat. Ekilat was a very active network at the time. Max Lindeger, who Ross mentioned, he was the secretary of GEN-OA, that's Oceania and Asia. Vinya Ariyaratne from Sri Lanka, founders of the Sarvodia movement with 12,000 villages involved. Albert Bates, ENA secretary. The Americas were united at the time, but they always had one delegate from the north and one from the south. So Albert was representing the farm in Tennessee, and Leora was representing Huehuecoyot in Mexico. And we were in Australia because we traveled. There was no Zoom meetings. There were no online meetings. We had to meet physically to talk and discuss things. We, in Europe, we decided to address the huge topic of Africa, so we took the initiative of creating twin villages, and a delegation of 7 people from Torri went to Guinea to collaborate with the Kolufifa, that is a network to fight hunger, and we built a solar dryer together with the residents of Medina in Guinea, and the solar dryer worked for many years to dry their mango and other fruits, and it was a wonderful adventure. And then in March 2002, collaborating with Marian Zeitling, we founded the GEN Senegal Network. And here is present also the delegate of the Ministry of Environment of the government that was chaired by Ablaye Wade. Ablaye Wade was the prime minister and was very open, and so he created this department for rural development and the transformation of traditional villages into eco-villages, which brought as a wonderful consequence that in September 2002, we signed an agreement at the UN, at the WSSD at the UN, a grant for $600,000 that was given to develop 12 traditional villages into sustainable communities. And this is a picture where you can see myself, Leora, Rob Wheeler, who has been very active on the GEM board, Martin Mueller, Marian Zeitling, the representative from Senegal, and that was for us a huge success, and this was signed in Johannesburg. And we also had this incredible adventure of meeting as a board and then as a delegation at El Llamado del Condor in Peru in Mount Veronica, September 2003. The place was stunning. We were in the Sacred Valley, and in this picture you can see Beatrice Briggs, who is my master and my teacher in facilitation, Martin Mueller, Jonathan Dawson, Leora, Linda Joseph, Fernando from Venezuela, myself, and Albert Bates. And we were the GEN delegation in a much larger gathering where we had the bioregional movement, the 12 Moon movement, a lot of different movements from all over America and Europe meeting. It was like 1,000 people gathering in Mount Veronica in Peru. And then the decision was that GEN Europe the office would rotate, and so it was then assigned to two different eco-villages. One was Zeg, that was the official headquarters, and Findorn, and the people who ran the office were Ina Meyer-Stoll and Jonathan Dawson, and they did a wonderful job. And so a new phase of GEN began, and we handed it over to them, and a lot of things developed that we started by fax and paper mail and phone calls and traveling to meet each other and dealing with strange currencies and not really understanding what people were telling us on the phone because both of our English was not perfect. So it was an adventure. We had fun, we loved it, and it made a huge difference for me personally in my life, of course, for our Ecovillage, and I think it gave a contribution to the network for those years.
Thank you, Lucilla. Right, so we were here at the transition from the offices around 2008. So Macaco, 2007. So what happened from then?
So you will see a lot of pictures now because I could not decide what to show. Because, you know, so much has been happening. And what I'm going to tell you, I'm going to speak about from 2007 to 2017, 18, more or less. It is definitely colored by my perception because, I mean, it's impossible to tell the story of GEN with all the people involved because it really spread out so wide. You know, in 2007 in Italy, there was a GEN meeting. This is Hilda and Jackson, very young, very beautiful. And, you know, the first, we really cannot say, like an amazing, amazing thank you to Hilda and Ross. Because if they did not start, and if they did not have this idea, if Ross did not have this awakening, and Hilda did not have this unbelievable, huge heart beating for all the people in the world, and especially also the less privileged ones, all this would not exist. And so they really have, like, I mean, I can't even know how full my heart is of gratitude for them. And in 2007, we were in Italy, in San Giorgio, where then later on the very terrible earthquake happened and everything was broken down. But in 2007, I came in from Damanhur. Before me, there was another person, and I was new, and the office needed to go somewhere because Ina and Achim were going out. At that moment, also something else was happening, that the big funding, there was big European funding in the time of Jonathan and Ina. So a lot of things were able to be developed. And they said, well, now the office needs to go somewhere else. And it went to Siebenlinden and to Damanhur. And I was the director, and Ulrike Schimmel was the director for Siebenlinden. And it was supposed that Jen would go like on a spare flame. So like really down, 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 because there was no more money. Because you know how important money is to develop things. But it's not only money. You know what? Actually, money is a secondary thing. Because money comes when there are people who have ideas. When there are people who really believe in things. It's unbelievable how synchronicity really works when these things happen. So then in 2008, a shift again. I was elected into the council. Kosha Joubert was elected into the council. And she was living in Siebenlinden at that time. And so the office continued in Siebenlinden and in Damanhur. And Capra Karuba, she stepped in as the secretary in my place. And actually we have her daughter here today, so that's really lovely. Second generation. And well, when we took over, it was like a really difficult time because we were supposed to really not be able to do anything. But the board that you saw, the picture before, we were not people who were just like saying, okay, now it becomes a bottom-up grassroots movement again and nothing much will happen besides networking. I can hear some music in the background. I don't know. Well, okay. And so we started to look into possibilities, how to go on. And in that moment, Ulrike Schimmel, she was really doing a great job in starting to look into European educational fundings. And so at that time there was the Grundtvig. And with the Grundtvig, actually, the first things came in, and Kosha was really great in fundraising as well. She was really, really great. And so when we were in the beginning, there was another really important point, which was that at that time there were only 3 regions existing. So there was Gen Asia, Genoa, there was Gen Europe and Gen Africa together, and there was Gena, so it was the North American and the South American continent together. And it became really clear that there was like such a unbalance. And we don't want unbalance inside of Gen. So Kosha, who was born in South Africa and was very strong, also had a very strong experience in her youth with apartheid. And she even split with her family because of that. And so her heart was beating really, really strongly for the African continent. And so she got the she got the task from the council to set up Gen Africa. And that was actually what was happening. So you will see so many pictures where we are also in Africa, because in the beginning it was this, we were working together very strongly. And in 2011, finally, there was the first African meeting, conference in Sekhem in Egypt. And that was the beginning of Gen Africa. And in the meantime, something happened like automatically, because in the South, in Latin America, the people don't speak English so much. And so they said, yeah, but why we don't feel like belonging to an organization where there's only English spoken? And so they created CASA, which means the Consejo de Asentamientos Sustentables de las Americas. And yeah, and it developed independently from GEN. And then we said, no, this is part of GEN, so you have to come back into GEN. And so CASA was created. And in the same time as Gen Africa was born, also CASA became part of GEN again. And that's the beginning of having the 5 different regions, plus NextGEN, which is the youth organization of GEN, which really calls in all the young people in this world who maybe are not living in eco-villages, but really want to make a difference and feel that there is something so important to be done, especially in these years. Now, in 2014, there was like a really unbelievable thing happening, because in Senegal, which was the country where, in Africa, where GEN had most roots, as we knew also thanks to the work of Marian Zeitlin, and there was, for the first time, somebody was elected to be the minister of eco-villages. And there was a plan done by Adam Ali, who was the responsible of an agency in Senegal for eco-villages. And he had the task to convert 14,000 traditional villages into eco-villages. Now, this did not go so well, but still the Senegalese eco-village is really, really strong, and it went on and on and on. And in 2011, another thing became very obvious, because at that time, GEN International was existing only on paper. So there were 2 people meeting, who were the president and the vice president, like representatives of the different regions. But actually, there was not much. There was not, let's say, an overhead that would give a common image. All the different regions were very different, were using different communication tools. Now we went away from paper and phone calls, because there's already internet, a lot of things are happening, and we are becoming more and more and more professional. And Kosha, Kosha is the person who is responsible so that all what you see in these last years is existing was going to happen, because she was a driving motor, a real strong force. She had a lot of intuition. She saw what was needed. And so she, from being the president and I was the vice president, she became the director of, the CEO, the director, the executive secretary of GEN Europe, because she was really working so hard. And you know, when you are working in the council, and really thanks to all the people who have been working in the council for so many years, it's all free work, it's all voluntary work. And so with all the hours that she was putting, she really needed to go into a paid position. And so the idea, after that GEN Africa was born, it was really important to have a global head. And that was GEN International. And so GEN International was developed. GEN International became became an association in Scotland, a Scottish, what is it called? Charity, exactly, a Scottish charity, and it started to have staff, a lot of staff. So a lot of things were developed. There were, I mean, it's important to understand that at that time there was still funding from Gaia Trust, a lot of funding from Gaia Trust. There was the funding from European educational money, and also Kosha, she is a person who is extremely authentic and credible. So, for example, the German Foreign Ministry actually financed a lot of the work of setting up Gen Africa. And she was able to get a lot of money in this sense. And so when you have money, you can move a lot of things. And one of the things that were also developed in that time is the Gen Ambassador program. So it was so important that more and more people were being involved. The Gen Ambassador program was launched because we wanted more people to have the possibility to become part of Gen. And then the Gen cards were developed. The Gen cards, you will have the possibility later on also in the workshop of Gaia Education for the EDE that we have today, right, Taisa? Yeah, yeah. And that we will have this workshop where we will talk, where we will also use the Gen cards, not only Gaia Education. And the cards were developed with a lot of people. A lot of people have collaborated from all the different regions to create, like, you know, Gaia Education in the beginning had developed a map, like a mandala of the 4 dimensions, where you had like 5 basic titles that in a certain sense comprise the whole of human being, the whole of human society. And this mandala, it's really beautiful, also was interpreted by Gen, and then the Gen cards were created with all pictures from the different eco-villages. And it has been really very, very important to get lots of recognition, because we use the cards, and this is really something very important that I want to share also. I have been present since 2009 in the COPs. Well, the COPs are the meeting of all the governments of the world of the United Nations, and they are also called the climate conferences. And in 2009 it was in Denmark, and if at that time we were saying, because we are an NGO, so as Gen we are an NGO, so we have consultative status at the United Nations. So so we have a booth and all this, you know. And if in the beginning we were there and people were, we were in the middle of the ministers and stuff, and they would say, eco-villages, yeah, nice, and they would move on. In the later years, what happened is something very, very different. Because more and more, when we went to the COPs, we had our booth somewhere, and you know, at the COPs, you have the ministers, and they have all the people behind them as if they were walking like kings of different times, you know. And then we had all these ministers walking by, not all of these, but quite a few, and they stopped at our booth. Oh, you do eco-villages? We say, and everybody stopped together with them. Yes, we do eco-villages. Oh, we really need to talk. We want to develop eco-villages in our places, and this is especially true for African and South American and people from not so much from Europe, but also in Europe. So a lot of MOUs, which are Memorandum of Understanding, were signed with different countries to help them to develop eco-villages in their countries. Because even mainstream is recognizing the necessity of creating sustainable settlements where people learn one thing that seems to be so difficult for human beings, which is living together. Living together seems to be the big challenge of humankind. And as eco-villages, we have really shown that it's possible to do that. Are we perfect? Not at all. Is there a lot of mess? Of course. But at least we are going in that direction. And who chooses to do something is somebody who puts their life into the service of creating something new, of believing that it's possible. And I think this is something that is transparent, that people can feel when they get in touch with us. And is my time completely over or only Gaia? Or can I still say something about Gaia Education? One sentence. So Gaia Education is the arm that grew out of it. And Gaia Education since 2005 became also on its own. And Gaia Education is really the organization that not only brought forward the EDE, but it developed a lot of courses. Today there are a lot of courses online, and it's really about participatory learning. It's not just because, learning sometimes can be so dry and so boring. But our new education is something that is participatory, that is experiential. And even when it's online, it's experiential and participatory. So Gaia Education has also a lot of courses and projects and European projects like Curious Soil, how to create new soil in places. And I mean, you can go on the website and see how many amazing things Gaia Education is doing. So I know that my time is over. I could talk for a long time because you have no idea how many stories there are. But I really, really, really want to tell you that I truly believe in this movement of communities because I think it's the future. It's the future of humanity. And if we as humans want to survive, we cannot do that alone. Because alone we are so weak. And together we are so strong. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Just doing a volume check. My voice has a tendency to boom out of these speakers a bit, so we'll figure it out. Good morning. My name's Jake. I've been around for a while. I may or may not have been in Fintorn in 98, 95, but I was about yay high, so didn't stand up for that one. NextGEN, I've been very involved with NextGEN, but I'd like to make it clear it did exist as an idea and an impulse before I came around. In sort of the mid-late noughties, young people, including one young man called Elliot Saxby, was attending some of the events that were happening, I think in Fintorn and maybe also in Tamera, and were struggling to find their place. And so they started separating themselves off, meeting just with the younger people, and came up with this idea of NextGEN, which initially was a little bit of a rebellious name. And they followed this impulse, they followed their energy, they wrote a very, very long handbook with a lot of information in it. And then as things do, it sort of flowed and it got a little bit quieter before in 2013, the idea was made of like, okay, this actually is an impulse that Jen wants, but let's see if we can bring it back into the fold a little bit more. As previously been sort of stated, we are a community of communities after all, and we do try and do everything under one larger umbrella if possible. So Gaia Trust, very generously, after Kosha's insistence and idea, provided some funding in 2013 to bring together young people from across the network, across the world, to Schweibenau, where the gathering was happening that year, with the idea of, okay, let's kickstart this thing, let's take this name, and let's see what can be created. And left it directly to those young people who came together to do that creating, which is, for me personally, one of the really inspiring and standout things of the Gen network, is that it leaves room for this sort of individuality and this, while also that comes with the diversity within the network, while also seeking to integrate it into the whole and to leave room for different languages, different cultures, different ways of doing things. Angel. Okay. A little bit dark. That's us sitting in a circle, making decisions. There was around 40, 50 young people from pretty like every single continent there in the space. When I came along to this meeting through a lot of pressure and insistence from a dear friend, Ethan Hirschtauber, who convinced me to come along. I wanted to be over with the big boys and the adults and everyone else and sort of where I thought things were happening. He convinced me to come along to these meetings, and I was moved and touched and inspired, because what I found was young people from everywhere, from different African countries, from Latin America, from Southeast Asia, who were all there. And what I found was people that I had in common, things in common with, especially this desire to sort of get on with practically applying the ideas we had and building it to try and build a different future, and to do it through connection and through community. There was also a lot of chaos. For some reason, the only 3 pictures I have from the group photo attempt is this one, the next one, and the next one. So there was a lot of cohesion, and there was a little bit of chaos. But yeah, from at this point, this is where we founded the idea of how basically replicating GEN's network structure with different regions. We decided to have our own NextGEN International, our own NextGEN Europe, and so sort of build this impulse. It was something that myself, along with Laura and our dear friend Lara, sort of really held for many years, sort of getting engaged over a few years. And it was, something that at times was quite hard work, but was made a lot easier through the invention of the internet, which resulted in anyone who's involved with NextGEN know that there are a lot of calls, more calls. You can just keep going. You get the impression, a lot of sitting on Zoom. Feet, and one more. There we go. So it was quite amazing, I have to say, because despite the fact that at times it felt like there was a lot of disconnection, one thing it did enable us to do is really build this connection across the globe. And it meant that when we did come together into meetings, this is in Zeg in 2014. This is the Echo when Brazil hosted a GEN gathering, and myself and a few others had the privilege to go along and immerse ourselves in a different culture's way of doing things, where until then I'd only experienced sort of that culture coming to me. The Echo actually got quite wild, literally, when some wildfires ended the conference early. So we got a different experience of community cohesion when myself and Robert Hall, who's not here, and a few others were out fighting wildfires, which was quite a... Hetty was there, amongst maybe some others here. Keep going, Angel. This was in Banyaya. So as you can see, we did come together and spend a lot of time also making the most of when we were coming together anyway, to work together, to make decisions, have food together, have some fun together, more fun together. Lots of some very serious conversations happening there in Fintorn. Get frustrated together and have some nap time together whenever we could take it. Okay, you can go to the next one now. NextGEN Europe, obviously, I held it and was part of a small team holding it for many years, but it was something that is still very much alive, especially in Europe. Some of the other networks, as funding has changed, is they've had to focus more internally and keeping things going in the way they can. But I just want to show, these are the faces of NextGEN Europe who are currently holding the organization and are currently present here at the gathering. If you're here, maybe you can just stand up and do a little twirl so people can see you. So if you are interested in hearing more about what NextGEN Europe is up to now, or want to get engaged, please go see them. Next. So, GEN Europe. I've got a lot to talk about in 2 minutes. GEN Europe is, since my engagement in GEN Europe, a lot has happened. The Arteta office, that we used to move the office around. Its most recent iteration arrived in Arteta in around 2015, 2016. Over this period that I've been engaged, we made a decision to keep the office there and find staff who are willing to move to the office rather than moving the office to the staff. This has really enabled us to increase the capacity, increase the staff by making a more stable and solid foundation in the network. It also enabled us to start having more physical meetings with the staff and council, even though the staff has grown quite a lot in size, which has really helped us to keep that essence of community even within the sort of operational nature of the organization. And it has enabled to, and we've also focused on growing and professionalizing the gathering, making sure that those organizing the gathering are actually able to dedicate their time and their lives through their work to what's going on. Not just show up and do it on a hairstring and willpower alone. And we've been focused on strategic partnerships. I'm going to fire through. So the Gen office, originally, those were there in the early days in Altera. It was quite cold and rugged environment, I have to say. However, by keeping the office cemented there, a lot of lights and work, and this is the staff council meeting this April, as you can see, sitting in circles together, sunshine. And also, one thing that has really touched me is our general assemblies. Gen, as I said, it has been this network that really embraces its diversity while seeking to integrate it. And one of the ways this happens is ensuring the bottom-up and the grassroots nature of the organization is through our general assemblies, which every year we really make time alongside the conference or the gathering to invite our membership in and come together, celebrate together, but also work together and make decisions together, and to make sure that what those who are sort of have been given the responsibility to guide and run the organization on a daily basis, sometimes a nightly basis, that they're in tune with the members and that the membership actually feel like what's going on is something that they see and feel as a representation of who they are too. Oh, yeah, backwards. This is the staff council meeting, the GA, and next. Oh. Okay. I don't know what technical stuff. The other thing that we've been really focusing on recent years is increasing the strategic partnerships and working with EU funding, not to just run youth exchanges and things like that, but also to work with as wide a variety of organizations as possible. EC Squared is working on being energy systems. Launch and Thrive and Clips have been working to support the emergence of new communities and making sure they have the tools to actually survive and thrive, not just stay in the sort of idea and dream world. We've also been responding to emerging situations in Europe with NextGEN in the sort of first wave of the ongoing refugee crisis in Europe, and working with Gen Ukraine on the Green Road Initiative, which you'll see Angel is wonderfully modeling alongside our IT support. He's our resident model of t-shirts and cool projects. Oh, back to that picture. Forward. I think there was one more picture. Oh, sleeping together. It's not just a NextGEN thing. We do work hard, and I think that's fundamentally the main thing that I see here, is that we're a network of people very, very passionate about what we do. And one of those things we're passionate about is sharing it with all those who are interested and can really be impacted by living together in this way. Thank you.
All right, and with that, big thank you for sharing some of the memories and stories and experiences from Jen. Thank you so much.